I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we're going to review the latest album from Depeche Mode, entitled Delta Machine, which I really like the album cover of this.
Yeah,
they
triangles.
They make the triangles, which is the Greek letter for Delta. All right, Tom, Depeche Mode. Do you like Depeche Mode?
I love Depeche Mode.
Is this one of your favorite bands?
Yes.
And do you know some stuff about them you could share with us?
I know a little bit. Now, these guys have got a very extensive discography.
Yeah.
It goes back.
We think this is 13th.
I
think that's right.
And maybe for studio albums that could be true. They also have a lot of compilations and live albums out there as well. So, they're one of those bands. They've been around over 30 years. I think their first album came out in like 1981. Just huge. And they were huge in the 80s for creating, this dark, synth-based. It was pop, but it was so much. It was almost too morose to call pop.
Yeah, right. I understand.
It's so dark. But they dominated the 80s with a slew of great albums, and then in 1990 came out with Violator, which to me is a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. And I know I'm not alone on this, and I know that there's also some who would disagree. I think it's easily Depeche Mode's best. But what's cool is after they came out with that album, they still didn't slow down. They came out with a bunch of stuff in the 90s that was really great. Albums like Songs of Faith and Devotion, Exciter, Ultra, all pretty good, some better than others. Right. And then, once again, in the 2000s, they come out with, Playing the Angel and Sounds of the Universe, which their last two albums before Delta Machine, which I actually think are two of their best albums. Right. I think those are very strong. Now, for me, Delta Machine didn't quite live up to their last two, but it's still good. So that's just kind of my general thoughts, but I want to get more into the sound itself.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
First thing I noticed when I turned this on, we reviewed Sounds of the Universe when we were just getting started.
Yeah.
We were just getting started.
I think it was like album review 7 or something.
So we were still wearing our newbie hats, right? Not really understanding what the hell we were trying to do. Now we kind of know how to break down music that we're reviewing. The first thing that I noticed about this was how stripped down the sound is.
Yes.
There is so much less atmosphere on Delta Machine than compared to Sounds of the Universe. And I like that because it's louder, it's more low end, and it's just this giant bold effect on the whole damn sound. And honestly, the first few tracks, I picked track 2 and 3, you're picking 3, 5, and 6. The whole first part of this album just blows me away. It just packs a punch. And then after that, it gets a little bit more moody. You get a lot more of the darker vocals. It gets to be a little bit more out there. It may be a little bit more atmospheric, but there's still so few synths and electronic elements going on that I'd still say that the sound is stripped down. Would you say that's accurate?
I would say that's totally accurate. It sounds like they took the number of layers they have in these songs and just cut them in half.
Yeah.
They just took all of the background out, and then what they were able to do is make what was there a lot louder, a lot more present. They're almost using a slight dubstep sound palette, but I don't want to say that it's dubstep because obviously they're using it very differently.
Yeah, the beats never get there.
No, they don't. And these guys are like the forefathers of what we would currently call electronic and synth-based music. If you're focused more on songwriting from a standpoint that's not dance.
Yeah.
And what these guys are able to do with that sound palette is just incredible to me. They moved towards the industrial sounds a lot. They were big influencers of the industrial genre. And for that reason, as far as it just being very stripped down, very minimalistic, but then abrasive and gritty with what layers are there, I have to say I think that's why I like their last couple albums a little better, because I like the ambiance of everything that goes into their earlier work.
Yeah.
But still here, you also have a lot of great guitar lines. I noticed that the guitar moves in more of a bluesy direction, but blends well with those electronic elements.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, there's one element I want to talk about that's kind of a negative element. This is 58 minutes long. Looks just under 58 minutes long. That's a long album in my book, and once you get up to around that hour mark, I look for justification in album length. This thing is 13 tracks. I really like the closing track, Goodbye. Also, one of the, I think it's a single, I'm not sure, but Soft Touch, Raw Nerve, I thought it was a really good track, showed a lot of emotional depth within the band's sound. But other than that, on the back half of the album, there's a lot of tracks that I think are more experimental in nature and kind of are almost diluting the sense of the tracks, of the style that they're going for in this album, and that they could have cut a couple of tracks out, lowered this track length, arranged the album in a way that made it feel less like a compilation, more like an actual album. I know I give that criticism a lot, but it just gets to be to the point that I don't really feel like it justifies a full hour's worth of Depeche Mode. They could have packed the same amount of punch and made a bigger statement had it been condensed down down and more focused.
I totally agree with that. And also I think part of that comes from the fact that I think a lot of these songs kind of sound similar and accomplish the same thing.
Yeah.
When you're cutting your sound palette down and not using as many layers in the songs, then you're naturally going to have a more cohesive sound, but also that's when I would say you definitely would want to condense things down a little bit. Now, you mentioned to me that the band said that they see this album as being closest to Violator.
Yeah, that's what I read.
Anything they've
That's
done.
what I read.
See, I think that's really interesting because I just wouldn't say that at all from an output standpoint. Now, an artist's perspective is going to be very different because they know what they're putting into the music. Right. As far as listeners go, all we know is what's coming out of it, the end product. And when I listen to this, I just think this is one of the most roughest and raw Depeche Mode albums I have ever heard.
Yeah.
Nothing sounds smooth about this.
Right.
You know, you go back to Violator and listen to songs like Halo and Blue Dress, and even though there's tension there, the vocalist is singing so much more smoothly.
Right.
And here, you almost get none of that.
Right.
The vocalist's presentation is just so gruff and so just aggressive. And then you got those gritty synth layers backing it up, and that's what is just throughout this whole album.
The vocalist really owns it on this album.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like he gets a gold star from me because so many times I see a vocalist who cannot project to the level of intensity that the mood that the instrumentation is creating and the song is creating, and it just kind of ruins it, puts the whole thing out of flow. Where this, it actually meets and it all lines up. It's just that I think that it was carbon copied a bit too many times.
I agree.
Personally, I think this is a really good album. However, I wouldn't classify it as great. I'm gonna go mid-70s, 75.
I'm gonna go 75 as well.
Hey, would it be?
Yeah.
75 from VIMTV. What did you guys think about Delta Machine? Was this one of your favorite Depeche Mode albums, or do you prefer some of their older works? Let us know what your favorite Depeche Mode album was at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and tell us what your favorite album is from 2013 that you haven't seen us review yet. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.